Welcome to another exciting episode of In Depth and Out Loud with me, Dubbz. Today joining me, a very special guest, ShoeShoe Qhu, former 702 Programs Manager and most recently CEO of MDDA. Now, if you have ever wondered how media affects diversity, this is the conversation we're going to be having today with ShoeShoe. Also, if you are interested in communications, journalism, or maybe you're just curious about how media reflects the lives we live, then this is the talk for you. ShoeShoe, thank you so much for being here today.
Khodzong, and khodzong to the students out there.
Lovely to see you again. I was so happy when you walked in.
I know. Thank you. Also happy to see you and happy to be here.
Fantastic. ShoeShoe, can you just give us an overview of your role as the head of MDDA in South Africa and also how it contributes to the development and promotion of media diversity in the country?
South Africa as a country comes from a very difficult past that is riddled with inequalities and underrepresentation, particularly of people who are indigenous. The role of the MDDA is partly to also correct that through media ownership and also the representation of voices for marginalized community members and languages. We come from a country where there were only a few radio stations. In fact, Boston, where we are now, would not have existed.
Yes.
Because we didn't have ways to license. Of course, you are streaming online now, and I hope that Boston is applying for a license with ICASA to start broadcasting. So we've moved from just a few radio stations, just a few television stations, and just a few print publications to a more diversified media landscape in this country. There's over 200 community radio stations that are currently licensed and are broadcasting. There's currently 4 community stations. Yes, there are challenges with those, but they are there for community members looking at issues that affect the communities. There's over 400 community print projects. Now, many of these broadcast in more than one language. It will be Sesotho, Setswana, Sepedi, Chivenda, Afrikaans, and some with English. And they come from very different communities in our country. They come from Muleji in Limpopo. You'll have stations in Inanda, in KZN. So the MDDA, our purpose and mandate is to create an environment that's enabling for media diversity and development in the country. We come from a partnership between the government of the Republic of South Africa and the public, or we could say independently owned media.
Yes.
Because they too recognized a need for us to have more plurality, more voices of those who come from those communities who aren't necessarily represented. And our funding is also split in that manner.
That's amazing. So if we look at publication and then we look at TV and we look at radio, so the MDDA comes in from a point of resources. Is there training as well? And funding, and I'm thinking if we say TV, we're looking at maybe independent film workers as well.
Not necessarily. So we fund in the main community media projects, and these are largely stations. If it's a radio station, it would be a community radio station that's broadcasting out of a community.
Okay.
Understanding there's 200 plus of them, there's not enough funds to fund everything they would apply for, and there's not enough funds to fund all of them. So we will fund them for what they've applied for based on an assessment that we would have done. And this is done through the board of the MDDA. And I think since I've joined the MDDA from 1st Jan 2024, I'm still new, right?
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm still new. So the board has been very supportive in ensuring that we meet the mandate, even with the limited resources. So we'll fund the community broadcast projects. Some are applying for equipment. Some would apply for capacity building. So these would be needs that relate to skills and training.
Yes.
But as well as the agency, we would also find the needs that the stations might have and provide the training. This year is a big year for our country. We're commemorating 30 years of democracy, but we're also going into elections. As the agency, we've done workshops and training to prepare community journalists to be able to cover the elections and to provide meaningful information and be mindful of the challenges in our legislation where national and provincial elections are concerned. We do also do a lot of research in understanding the sector that we are operating in and look at models that will help us to support the sector even better. So yes, our funding is in the main money, but we also provide capacity building, training, and we also do research. For community television projects, we support them also similarly with the community broadcast projects, and that would be for studio equipment, transmission fees, and also capacity building and training for their teams, and also, if possible, where there are resources available, we do also support sustainability for projects, and this could be contributions towards stipends for volunteers at those community stations. And the same applies for community print projects. And these are, I'd say, going through difficult times in this country, not just them. In fact, the print media and the media as a whole is having to deal with challenges of how do we remain relevant and sustainable in a world where the students are concerned with just scrolling through their phones to get content. We're now not looking at the length of videos. We are looking at what is the dwell time in the video. We've been having this conversation for so long, and I can't stop but wonder, is a Boston student going to listen to this whole conversation, or are they only going to listen to the 8 seconds and then scroll to the next? And so we also need to measure the length of kilometers someone is scrolling on their phones on. And I think the need is for us to then think about what is the kind of content that will be relevant for the times we live in. But also, we have to serve the communities that we are engaging with. While we recognize that there's changes, that you will create content that will be a short TikTok video where you are dancing because there's a dancing challenge, there's also a need for programs that are educational like this one.
Yes.
I think my worry, though, is, are the young people interested in these conversations? Do they care, maybe? And if they do care, maybe they'll send me a message.
I think they will, because there's those students that are passionate in journalism, in communication, and those that are also curious about understanding media development and diversity. And there's lots of storytellers as well, creatives within media, within Boston Media House. So I do think, like you said earlier on, there might be parts that they're interested in, and they might just say, okay, I don't want that part, I just want this part.
Fast forward or, increase the speed of listening. And I guess those are the times that we live in, and those are the considerations we have to onboard in the creation of content and the platform we are distributing the content on. I think for a long time, what we often teach students, I'm an absolute learner for life, and I'm a teacher for life. In fact, I've guest lectured here for the radio students at Boston in the Centon campus. If there are opportunities, please consider me. I don't have as much time in the future, but I can come for a guest lecture. Is that I think there's a need for us to, even for the young journalists that are out there that are growing into this career and are looking at opportunities for themselves in the future, is to think less about the platforms and more about the art of storytelling. How do I tell a really good story using sound? If I started doing this, you can have a rhythm to it. You start thinking about something.
Exactly.
And that's what sound is, using sonic triggers to draw people in. And that's an important area for us. And if I wanted to tell a story using pictures, what kind of pictures am I going to tell that will be connecting, and also that you will just look at them and there's just so much resonance. Much like what you see with the AI, they just seem to have really refined how to just get you. The pictures are shocking, but interesting enough for you to really, so that's where I think our investment should be. How do we tell really good stories using various media platforms and what's available based on our senses? And then we have to be platform agnostic. Our stories should be able to translate to visual. They should be able to translate to audio. You should be able to combine the various story models and create a multimedia platform, because I think tomorrow FM might not necessarily be a thing. Your TV might not be a thing, because we are seeing the growth in the over-the-top platforms or OTT platforms. So those are considerations I'd say young people who are still in school now need to look at is, where am I going to spend my most time in? And what else can I do to augment my skills and learnings here? Aware of the challenges and the opportunities that are currently our reality with the emergence of all of these forms of technologies, including generative AI.
That's incredible, because I remember the first time when I met you, we had a conversation about storytelling, and I'm going to move it away now, different mediums, to radio, but also in traffic, how you mentioned, you need to tell a story to the Joburg driver. And I'll never forget that, because even on radio, storytelling, TV, it's the same thing, but it's the creative element you bring into it and mastering that. And I must say, it's not an easy thing. I mean, you can tell a basic story, but to get to that pinnacle where it's absolutely exceptional, I think it takes a lot of practice. Maybe you should come in and do a talk on that, actually.
Well, sure, I'll definitely come through. I think storytelling is easy, and I think we are grown into storytelling. It's where we come from, our families. I'll use an example of growing up in a village where we have a mother, grandmother, and all of the siblings and cousins and everyone we live in the village with. And every time someone, whether I hear a portion of or I read a part of, Tsilane ngwanake, Tsilane ngwanake, itla ho nke bo habe uje ngwanake. And Tsilane responds, ke a utlwa hemme, ke a utlwa hemme. Ne bua sanonyana tshwana mafikeng. And the question is, how does that make you feel when you hear that? And for me, that's the level of storytelling we want to be telling.
Relatability.
It has to resonate. It has to be relatable.
Nostalgia.
It's got all of those elements. That was such a simple story, but the impact of it was so much. We can make other examples of other stories that are even told through songs. And I think my question to the content creators, the journalists who write, and the influencers, as they like to call themselves now, is, what did the other person listening to your story or reading it feel after reading your story? Did you move them in any way to either act in a particular way or to think in a particular manner?
Or educate.
Did you educate them? So have you contributed meaningfully? Not that entertainment isn't contribution, it is. Please do not hate me. It's fine to go and do those dances, but we need more than that. And even through the dances, we can tell
a story. There we go.
Through the music and the sound,
yes,
we can tell stories and be a little bit more intentional with what we're saying and what we do and what we are hoping for. And I guess my question is, what are your aspirations for the people you are speaking with, you are writing to, you are singing to, you are producing radio content for? What do you want them to remember at the end of the program? And I think that's where I would like for us to run, but be grounded in that we aren't doing things for ourselves. There's a bigger role, responsibility that we are carrying. As journalists and content creators, it doesn't matter what platform you are in.
With your background in radio, how do you believe radio as a medium contributes to promoting diversity and inclusion in media in the South African context?
I'll tell you why my dream of ever being a radio broadcaster died.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have not recovered from this. So for the I should get counseling, whatever. Does Boston have?
I'll find out.
Please, can we find out? I'm keen. I mean, I'll benefit even from the student councillors, like those ones that help. And it'd been years I had worked in radio broadcasting as a field reporter, as a content producer, a presenter, music compiler. Think about it in radio. I have done it. I was at this point and journey in my life set on I'm going to be a current affairs show host. I'll have a show in the evenings. It will be on Thursday. And I'll have a good evening. Welcome to whatever radio station.
Yes.
I am this person and this is your show. And in a journey to build towards this very accomplished broadcaster, I'd been doing some features on SAFM. And I remember I was in an interview not an interview, it was a feature with Ashraf. So we were in a conversation. Ashraf Gada, who's now on the 3 back on radio. And we're talking about technology and developments there. And Apple had just released a new phone. Guess what I called Apple? Apple.
What happened? Is this the trauma?
Yes, the listeners come for me. And I think what is also unkind about when you are on the radio and you also are a content producer, you have access to the messages. People still send SMSs at the time.
You do.
So you go on air and then you say, Apple has a new device that's out in the market, interesting features, no changes from the previous device. You are done. You then go back and someone says, Apple, tell that one there's no such thing as Apple. It's Apple. Apple. You know, you can hear their shoutings through the text.
Yes, 100%.
And then I thought, there's just something I don't have in me that would allow for me to move forward. I'm not ready to receive feedback, not in this way.
Yeah.
This is perilous. Like, I will never be able to survive. I didn't immediately make the decision on that day, but I knew that to become a broadcaster in radio, language is important. The use of sound and the sonic triggers I spoke about is very important. And I think as a country in South Africa, what we have done for a long time is to define a language and say this is English and this is the right English.
Yes.
These are the pronunciations and this is how you say it. If you don't say it this way, you've said it incorrectly. I must say though, from the times when I was still attempting to get onto the radio, I think there's been changes and developments that, people are more welcoming to hearing Sesotho on the radio and more welcoming to our accents and the way we speak. I will say that there's been development even in diversity and inclusivity, even on the well-established mediums that you have. But I would say from a content development space and the sharing of content space, over and above the 18 radio stations and a few language stations the SABC has, the majority of the community radio stations do have other African languages, whether official or not, like your Setlokwa or your Sihlubi in the northern Eastern Cape, Southern KZN.
Yes.
So all of the languages are accommodated for. I think there's hope that we believe in this diversity and that we are able to interpret that into the work that we do in the broadcasting space. I think for content creators though, there's more opportunities for us to explore those. In addition to the English that we have, so we can reach more markets. I'd say do a bit more of Siputi, if Omoputi out there.
Yeah.
Do a bit more of your Sindebele languages and all of the other languages that are much more marginalized, to also grow content library in those languages and develop those languages by contributing to the content in those platforms instead of the bias that we are seeing currently, which is largely English.
Yeah, I must add that I think Sesotho Saka is actually very good. And no, I did very well in school. Higher grade, B+. Okay. And I've done a couple of voiceovers, guys, Sesotho. Very fluent. But I always questioned if I were to go to like a Sesotho radio station, would I cope? I think I'd struggle with my days, numbers. Re bue puo ya Sesotho ka tsone taba tsenana. Ke translate.
Ha ke re ke Afrika Borwa mo dipuo di a fetofetoa.
Ka nnete jwale
le baithuti ba Boston mona ke na le bonnete ba hore ba bang ba bona ba na le kutlwisiso ya puo ya Sesotho.
Ya puo ya Sesotho hobane re diverse. Jwale he ne ke tjho hore ke bona nkare ha nke ka kena like ke bona bo di stationing tsena tsa Sesotho ke tlo sokolanyana ka nako wa bona I'll forget the months. I don't know the months ka Sesotho. Ke tlo sokola mo fela mara wa bona ho tse ding a nka kena.
Ke nahana hore boholo ba nako ba bona le jena so mphetoletse Sesotho ho ima o khutlela sekgweng.
Come back.
You know, I think boholo ba nako, what is that one in English now?
Which one? Diversity.
Boholo ba nako.
Oh, boholo ba nako. Time?
Most times, something about times. Anyway, in most instances, perhaps.
Better.
That's the better English phrase to use. In most instances, I think the language owners have also not moved with the time. We've got the Pan South African Language Board in this country that is set to assist us in the development of our languages. And I do agree with you that because we spend majority of our time,
yes.
You know, can you imagine? You have a dream in English. You have to,
not in your mother tongue.
No, but that's the reality of where we are because our work and days are set in that language, and that's why it would be difficult to think about Pherekgong kapa Mmesa Motsheanong in any other language, if not in English. But I would say that we all have a responsibility to contribute a little bit in the development of our various languages. And whether that is in engagements like this, where we are promoting Sesotho and we are showing that Hubua Sesotho does not mean you are less educated. But I also think that there's way more opportunities presently for someone who can speak more than one language. It will help you, and the benefits are so much more because if I'm speaking with you in a language that we both understand, there's a different level of resonance and a different level of understanding, and I'm able to interpret things differently instead of just translating them. So for me, I would say yes, let's invest in languages. Boston, are you going to have a Sesotho isiZulu channel?
So can you discuss any successful projects or collabs your agency has undertaken to address inequalities and also promote media literacy among marginalized communities in South Africa?
So we do a lot of work, and because resources are limited, we do a lot of partnerships. I'll talk first about the projects that we have funded most recently. We've funded equipment and done a bit of support in capacity building and training. We recently opened a station with new studios in Mpumalanga, Kanyamazana, state-of-the-art studios. That station has also gone further on to use their old equipment as a recording facility for radio dramas and music for community members who are looking to use those studios and grow in those skills and areas. We've also handed over state-of-the-art studios in Cape Town at CCFM. They've got a beautiful view onto Muizenberg Beach. They've also decided that they will use their old studios for further training development and to support the communities with recording in music instead of having to always want to come to Johannesburg for those. We've done a number of workshops for community media stations that are current beneficiaries for equipment that we've given them, but also out of the over 200 broadcasters and the print projects where we've done training for technical skills. We've done training for elections and elections coverage. We've done training for digital literacy. We have a standing partnership with NEMISA, the National Electronic Media Institute of South Africa. One of the acronyms, but there we go. NEMISA, where we provide training in the digital skills sector, understanding that there's a need for us to grow in this area. And as an agency, we are constantly looking for opportunities to partner with institutions of higher learning, to partner with other communities, businesses that have an aligned view in what we need to do to assist in building and supporting media development and diversity, and making sure that we are giving community members the right skills, the right support to be able to participate meaningfully in their communities, but also in this democratic project, which is now 30 years.
So there's still radio dramas, ne?
Oh, yes, of course.
I love them so much, but like, I feel like they're so hidden. I must be honest. I feel like the opportunity for that, again, is just so hidden.
Do you listen to podcasts?
Yes, I do, but I'm just like, I know there's a lot of students, for an example, that are great in isiZulu, great Kasipedi, wonderful Kasisotho, and probably something they would be interested in, storytelling, but you know, Kavenek, and you doing it for radio. But I don't even know who to contact for things like that. I've wanted to do this. Even like my Sesotho has gone funny now. Okay, corrected.
Yes, there's radio dramas. I think radio dramas, in fact, if we strip them down to the simplest form, we talk about audio documentaries or audio stories. Because I think my point of emphasizing, let's forget the platform where you are publishing your audio stories on. Forget that it is on radio and that it's a radio drama. Think about it, it's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you are telling the audio story, and you could be doing a documentary on those. And this is why I'm saying there's so many opportunities that are unexplored yet, because most times we do confine ourselves to the traditional media platforms or the more established ways of doing things.
Yes.
There's YouTube now. Everyone wants to put up a vlog on YouTube. And then what happens when Google decides, I'm going to pull your channel down for whatever reason, or someone goes and reports it in however way. And this is why I'm saying, let's be platform agnostic, tell really good stories. And there's a variety of formats in storytelling. It could be like a radio drama in that it is fiction, or it could be dramatized where it's a real story, where you are using dramatization to tell the story, or it could be an audio documentary where there's no narrator, for example. You are using various sounds for the story to tell itself, or it's a narrated documentary where the narrator says what they are observing and they are seeing. And so I think there's just so many formats for us to explore, which we haven't yet really invested ourselves in, because we have limited ourselves to, I want to be really famous, and I wanna be on TV. And if that's not happening for me,
then I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Or I'll try TikTok, and this TikTok thing is not working for me. Oh my God, life is so hard. And I know I'm exaggerating, but I'm just saying,
I'm getting the point.
There's just so many more ways
and options we have to create as creatives.
Absolutely.
Patong, thank you so much for this conversation. Yes.
The impact of technology.
But thank you so much. We're going to have to call you through But thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So there we have it. I think we've learned today that media is not just about what you hear and see, but it is about storytelling. So until next time, continue advocating for diversity in media.